If you want to know when and how much you'll get paid from dividends, you've got to know these dividend dates and numbers. Hey guys, I'm Jasper, a financial market analyst working with Trading 212 to improve your financial education. Quiz question, what's everybody's favorite day? No, not your birthday, not St. Patrick's Day, it's payday. One of the beautiful things about being a dividend investor is you get more than one payday. And better still, you didn't even work for the pay because it's all passive income. But with great numbers of paydays comes great responsibility. By the end of watching this video, you'll know when your dividend payments are and how much you'll get paid. In fact, you're going to understand all the important mechanics of earning dividend income all in less than 10 minutes. Specifically, I'm going to explain the 4 important dates to know, which are the declaration date, ex-dividend date, record date and payment date, and the 2 most important formulas, which are dividend yield and dividend payment ratio. Then I'll wrap it all up together with a delicious example of if you owned Apple stock. By the way, if you're completely new to dividends, I'd recommend hitting the pause button and watching my other video, Getting Started with Dividend Investing. The link is in the description below, then come right back to this one. But in a nutshell, dividends are cash payments that a company will pay to its shareholders at regular intervals, normally quarterly. These payments come from the company's earnings and are only released to individuals who hold shares in the company. Dividends help companies transfer value to their investors, and as an investor, dividends can provide you with regular income and allow you to purchase more stock in the company for free. Okay, on to the dates. The declaration date. Companies pay dividends regularly, most often quarterly, as that's when earnings reports are released. The declaration date is the date that the company announces it is paying the dividend to investors. On the declaration date, a declaration statement is released, which contains some of the specifics about dividends, including the all-important size of the dividend payment, i.e. it's on the declaration date that we learn how much we get paid. As a bit of an aside, the declaration date can be a big day for the share price because the size of the dividend gives us a big clue about what management think about the company's performance. If the company increases the size of its dividend, then that shows management is confident enough in future earnings growth to give more of it away to shareholders. But if a firm announces a lower dividend payment on its declaration date, it's often a bad omen for what management expects from the future earnings. And that doesn't have to be the case, so you need to look at it at a situation by situation basis. Some other things to be found on the declaration statement are the record date of the dividend and the payment date, both of which I'll cover shortly. Ex-dividend date. The ex-dividend date tells us the date by which you must own the stock to receive the next scheduled dividend. In the City of London, you'll hear about the share prices falling because they went ex-div. If you purchase the stock before the ex-dividend date, you're entitled to the dividend. Likewise, if you bought the stock on or after the dividend date, you are not eligible for this dividend payment and the seller will keep it. That's why the share price drops when it goes ex-div, because the shares are adjusting for the fact that they now don't include the coming dividend payment. The ex-dividend date is typically set 2 business days prior to the record date. Record date. The record date, aka date of record, is similar to the ex-dividend date. The difference is that you must be on the company's books as a shareholder, i.e. there's a record of you owning the stock by this date in order to receive the dividend payment. Payment date. The payment date does what it says on the tin.
It does exactly what it says on the tin.
It's this one that we can add to our list of favorite days, the date that the company will pay the dividend to its shareholders. The company will send you a dividend, and if you own stock via Trading 212, there will be a pop-up in the app to show you received it, normally a day or 2 later. Happy days. Now you know all the important dates, I'm going to move swiftly on to the important ratios to know when analyzing which dividend stock to buy. Dividend yield. The dividend yield of a stock is a company's total dividend payments for the year expressed as a percentage of its current stock price. So the dividend formula is shown as dividend yield equals total dividend divided by stock price times 100. Using this formula, I can work out the dividend yield of a stock. If company A trades at $120 and its dividend per share is $6 annually, to work out the dividend yield, all I have to do is 6 divided by 120 equals 0.05, times that by 100, which equals 5, so we know the dividend yield equals 5%. Dividend yields will change over time. If the company decides to increase the dividend, then the yield goes up and vice versa. The dividend yield also moves with the share price. When the price of the stock drops, then the dividend yield goes up. And if anyone was surprised to hear that the dividend yield goes up when the price falls, let's go back to our example. Say company A's shares are now trading at $100 instead of $120. but the payout is still set at $6. 6 divided by 100 equals 0.06 times 100, and we get a yield of 6% this time, bigger than the 5% previously. The benefit of a high dividend yield stock is pretty obvious. It means you're getting paid more per stock that you own. But there can be some drawbacks. If a company has a high dividend yield, it means that they are choosing to give away their earnings instead of investing them in R&D and expansion, and that limits the company's future growth potential. There's also another big caveat to a high dividend yield. It may not be sustainable. You don't want to buy a stock for its great dividend yield, only for management to cut the dividend as soon as you own it to something more affordable. That's where our next item comes into play. Dividend payment ratio. As investors, we think of dividends as some nice little extra change rattling around in our pocket, but another way to think of a dividend is as a cost to the company offering it. If a company starts earning less income, the prudent thing for management to do is cut costs, one of which, as I've just said, is the dividend. The problem is that management won't always do the prudent thing right away, especially if their compensation is tied to the stock price or if they own the stock and are actually earning some dividends themselves. This is where the dividend payment ratio, or DPR, comes in. The DPR is the percentage of a company's earnings that they pay out to shareholders in dividends. Working out the DPR of a company allows us to see how sustainable the dividend payments are. To work out the DPR of a company, we use the following formula. So payout ratio equals dividends per share, that's DPS, divided by earnings per share, EPS. If company B has a DPS of $2 and an EPS of $4, the payout ratio is 50%. We as investors prefer lower DPRs because it means there's a lower risk that the dividend eventually gets cut and a better chance that it will be consistently growing over time. You can think of it as the higher the dividend payout ratio, the less of a safety net there is for a company's earnings. One bad quarter for the company and they could be in trouble. The rule of thumb is to invest when the dividend payout ratio is below 50%, showing that the company is reinvesting more of its profits than it's paying out, laying the groundwork for future earnings growth and, by extension, dividends growth. Now for our example dividend stock investment. Here is an example of what receiving dividends would look like if you own shares in Apple. Though I do want to be super crystal clear here, I've chosen Apple because it's one of the biggest and best known companies in the world, not as any kind of recommendation to buy it. Let's say you don't own Apple shares yet and want to see what the dividend yield and payout ratios are. If I tap most popular stocks, then Apple is near the top. I tap Apple, then under key ratios, you can see dividend yield. Then if I tap all ratios and scroll to per share data, I can see the EPS and the DPS data separately, or even easier, I can scroll to the financial strength section and see the payout ratio calculated there by itself. This is what the screen will look like when you've received a dividend payout from Apple. You can see that you've got the date received at the top, and this is of course the payment date. You've got the ex-div date here. That is roughly a week before the payment date, which is about typical. Okay, let's recap. We've looked at the 4 main dates to know when dividend investing, including the ex-div date, which is the last day to qualify for the dividend, and the payment date, which is when you are sent the cash. We also ran through the dividend yield and the payout ratios, which tell you what you can expect to earn in dividends and how sustainable that payment is. If you've got something to say about dividends, maybe something you want me to cover next time, please drop us a comment. And if you like this video, I implore you to please make sure you smash the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so that you see more videos like these as soon as they're released. Thank you very much for watching and happy investing.